Hi everybody, I just got off the Zoom chat with you guys and some of you guys are crazy, but it was a lot of fun. And I really like seeing your pets and your bedrooms and just generally seeing you all. And I miss you. I wish we could get back to school sooner rather than later, but it looks like it's gonna be at least another 3 weeks and maybe even more than that, but we'll see. Maybe by then we can all get back together for the last little push of school before summer break. We're reading The Best School Year Ever. And when last we left off, Leroy had hung a dead snake from the light switch chain in the supply closet at school and caused a great big commotion. In fact, the dead snake at some point even got brought back to class and put into the pencil sharpener. Now, Alice Wendelken's mother, Mrs. Wendelken, was very upset about this whole thing. In fact, she was furious that the Herdmans didn't get in bigger trouble. But they never really seem to completely get in trouble, do they? Because they are the Herdmans. And that's where we last left off. Mrs. Wendelken was just furious that she couldn't get those Herdmans to get expelled from the school or something. And she went to the principal, and the principal said, "I just think you ought to drop the whole subject." That probably would have been the end of it, except that Mrs. Wendelken described this conversation to my mother, who described it to Miss Phillips. Then Miss Phillips went to school and told Mr. Crabtree that she had a plan to civilize the Herdmans, or at least one of them. "It's about the snake," she began, but Mr. Crabtree wouldn't let her say any more. "I'll do it," he said. "I don't even care what it is you want, just so I don't have to hear any more about that snake." So Leroy got named Good Citizen of the Month for act of kindness, the award read. Of course, this was one big surprise to everybody, especially Leroy, and it nearly killed Alice Wendelken, who had piled up more good deeds and good grades and extra credit projects and perfect attendance records than anybody else in the whole history of Woodrow Wilson School, and expected to be the Good Citizen of the Month for the rest of her life. Nobody could figure out what kind thing Leroy had done, but Miss Phillips told my mother. "He buried a snake?" Mother said. "That's it?" "That's it," Miss Phillips said. "Well, I guess if you were the snake, you might call it an act of kindness, but I don't understand. I just thought he might decide to live up to the honor," Miss Phillips explained. "He might be a changed person." Mother said she wouldn't count on it. "He probably doesn't even know what he did." "He didn't even do it," Charlie told her. "Imogene just said he did. Nobody buried the snake. The janitor threw in the trash masher. I saw him." "Well, don't tell anyone," Mother said. Mrs. Wendelken would never shut up about it. Mother was right about Leroy. He didn't know what he did or how he got to be Good Citizen of the Month, and when Charlie wouldn't tell him, he buried Charlie up to his neck in the trash masher barrel, which would have been tough on Charlie if the janitor didn't happen to see him before he mashed up the trash. So Leroy wasn't a changed person, unless you want to count that he only buried Charlie up to his neck instead of all the way. Chapter 4. The janitor, Mr. Sprague, said that was that. No more trash masher. He told the principal that we could have a trash masher or we could have the Herdmans, but we could not have both under one roof. "I can't stand around and guard the thing all day," he said. "There's 6 of them and only 1 of me, and every time I leave the basement to go sweep a floor, they shove something else into it." They'd already mashed up the 4th grade ant farm and the plastic dinosaur exhibit, and then Leroy went ahead and mashed up the Good School Citizen Award too once he found out he couldn't eat it or spend it or sell it to anybody. Alice reported this to her mother, and Mrs. Wendelken was so disgusted about the whole thing that she resigned from the PTA, which my father said was good news for the PTA. Of course, Mrs. Wendelken didn't come right out and say, "I quit because I'm mad at everybody." She just said it wasn't fair for her to run the PTA talent show because Alice was in it. She said Mother could do that because Mother didn't have any talented children in it. Does that mean we aren't talented or that we just aren't in it? Charlie asked. And I said, both. Actually, nobody had any talented children in it, and when they really had to scratch around to get kids to do anything. So it was no Night of 1,000 Stars, which was what the posters said. Night of 1,000 Stars, an evening of family entertainment, PTA talent show. When my father saw the list of acts, he said he hoped there would be more talent in the refreshments than there was going to be in the show. There aren't any refreshments, Mother told him. This is just an evening of family entertainment. He shook his head. Not unless you have refreshments, it won't be. I guess my mother took another look at the list because that night she called around people to make cookies and brownies and cupcakes and punch. And the next day the posters said, Night of 1,000 Stars, an evening of family entertainment, PTA talent show, with delicious refreshments crowded in at the bottom. This was a big mistake because refreshments is the one long word that all the Herdmans understand, and right away you knew they'd figure out some way to get at them. They can't, Alice said. They'd have to be in the show, and they can't do anything talented. They can steal, Charlie said. Alice looked at him the way my mother looks at the bottom of the hamster cage. That's not a talent, she said. Maybe not, but the Herdmans did it better than anybody else. Still, it was hard to see how they would do it for an audience, or what they would call it on the program, or what they would steal, because there wasn't much left that they hadn't already stolen. Last year, they were all absent on October 4th, and we had Arbor Day because for the last 3 years the Herdmans had stolen the tree, and the principal said at least this year we'd finally get it planted, even if it dried up over the winter and died. Maybe they've got some talent we don't know about, I said. And sure enough, 3 days later, Gladys Herdman took a pair of kindergarten safety scissors and cut Eugene Preston's hair in the shape of a dog. It could have been a cat, though, or a horse or a pig. Something with 4 legs and a tail. Anyway, or something with 5 legs and no tail. You had to look right down at the top of his head to see it. But this was what you mostly saw of Eugene anyway, because he was the shortest kid in the 2nd grade, or the 1st grade, or even kindergarten. So naturally, he got picked on a lot. And if you had to choose which kid in the Woodrow Wilson School would get his hair cut in the shape of a dog for no reason, you would choose Eugene. Of course, he was already a nervous wreck from being the shortest kid around, and you knew it wasn't going to calm him down to have people holler, "Here, Fido," or "Here, Spot," "Here, boy," all at him. And if his hair was anything like the rest of him, he would probably be this way for years. So things didn't look good for Eugene. "A dog?" my father said when he heard about it. "I can't believe it looks like a dog." "Who says it looks like a dog?" "The art teacher," Charlie said. "I heard her tell the principal. She said if it just wasn't on Eugene's head, she would display it as an example of a living sculpture." "Why don't you tell that to Eugene?" Mother said. "It might make him feel better. I know to know that he is a living sculpture." I didn't think so. For one thing, nobody knew what a living sculpture was. I helped Eugene look it up in the encyclopedia. But we looked under living instead of sculpture and never got past living sacrifice, which was all about torture, and that sure didn't make Eugene feel better. "Come on, Eugene," I said. "Don't be crazy. No one's going to make you a sacrifice." "Ha!" he said. "How about Gladys Herdman?" He was really worried, and between being worried and short and having his hair all chopped up, Eugene began to twitch and wiggle and bite his fingernails and bang himself on the head. "I can't help it," he said. "It makes me feel better." Actually, there wasn't a kid in the Woodrow Wilson School who didn't wiggle or twitch or tie knots in his hair or something. Boomer Malone once ate a whole pencil without even knowing it till he got to the eraser and broke off a tooth. Some kids banged their heads too. when they didn't have anything else to do. And of course, the Herdmans banged other kids on the head. But nobody did it as hard as Eugene. This was fascinating to Gladys Herdman. She quit hitting him and hollering at him and just followed him around everywhere, waiting for him to knock himself out. Or so we all thought. That's it for tonight, boys and girls. You all have a great weekend. I know I'm really looking forward to the weekend. I want you to get outside and play, but at a socially acceptable distance, of course. And I will see you next week on Zoom conferencing, and I'll be in touch with you via email. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.